Hi guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Dr. Whitney Costers. I'm a professor of English, and I'm so glad that you're here with me today because if you enjoy thoughtful, rigorous discussions of literature that go beyond plot summary and instead explore how stories persuade us, unsettle us, and force us to confront uncomfortable truths about human behavior and moral reasoning, then I invite you to subscribe because that is exactly what this channel is devoted to. I also have a growing collection of lectures on dystopian literature and short fiction more broadly, so if you're interested in those genres, you will have plenty to explore here. In today's lecture, we are going to talk about Ursula K. Le Guin's The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas, a short work of philosophical fiction published in 1973 that continues to haunt readers to this day. Now, this is a story that looks very simple on the page, yet refuses to let us resolve it emotionally or ethically because it's not interested in offering a moral lesson that can be neatly absorbed and then set aside. Instead, it takes us inside a moral structure and asks us to experience what that structure actually requires, both intellectually and emotionally. Now, it's important to note that Omelas doesn't emerge in a vacuum. Le Guin was writing in the early 70s, a period marked by profound cultural disillusionment and moral uncertainty in the US and beyond. This was a post Vietnam and post civil rights movement, a moment shaped by Cold War anxieties, environmental concerns, and growing skepticism about grand narratives of progress and prosperity. Many writers during this period were questioning whether the comforts of modern life were built on invisible forms of violence, exploitation, and sacrifice that polite society simply preferred not to acknowledge. Le Guin, who was deeply influenced by philosophy, anthropology, and political thought, was especially interested in how societies justify themselves, how they tell stories that make inequality or suffering seem inevitable, and how language itself can normalize arrangements that might otherwise appear intolerable. Omelas grows directly out of that concern. It's not simply a fantasy or a dystopia, but a moral thought experiment rendered as a narrative. And that distinction matters because the story's power lies less in what happens than in how we are made to think and feel as it unfolds. At first glance, Omelas appears to be a utopia. I mean, the story opens on a summer festival filled with light, music, movement, and communal joy. Children run freely, bells ring, horses prance, and the city seems peaceful, intelligent, and humane. Le Guin is very careful to avoid the obvious warning signs we expect from dystopian fiction. There's no tyrannical ruler or visible surveillance, overt oppression, or pervasive fear. No kings, slaves, extreme poverty, or war. In fact, the narrator explicitly insists that Omelas is not naive or primitive, but sophisticated, technologically capable, and emotionally rich. Now, this insistence is crucial. Le Guin doesn't want us to dismiss Omelas as unrealistic or childish. She wants us to want the city to exist. She wants us to find it plausible, appealing, and even admirable. And this is where rhetoric becomes central to the story. So, one of the most striking features of Omelas is the narrator's voice. It doesn't function like a traditional omniscient narrator who simply reports facts. Instead, the narrator repeatedly turns outward, addressing the reader directly and suggesting that readers may need to imagine certain details differently in order to fully accept the city's happiness. If something feels too simple, we're encouraged to complicate it. If something feels implausible, we're invited to refine it in our minds. The narrator even acknowledges that different readers may require different versions of Omelas in order to believe in it. Now, this is not an incidental stylistic choice. It is rhetorical maneuver. The narrator is not merely describing Omelas, but actively persuading us to participate in its construction, to collaborate in making it feel coherent, reasonable, and real. In other words, we are not passive observers. We are being invited to create the very world that we will later be asked to judge. And that collaboration matters deeply because once we've invested imagination, desire, and goodwill into Omelas, the story reveals what the city is built upon. Beneath one of Omelas' beautiful buildings, or a public structure, or even a private home, however you decide to imagine it, there is a locked room. And inside that room is a child who is kept in conditions of extreme neglect and suffering. The child is malnourished, isolated, frightened, and deprived of comfort, dignity, and affection. The child is not allowed to leave because, as we are told, the happiness of Omelas depends entirely on its misery. Now, every citizen of Omelas knows about the child. At some point in their lives, they are taken to see it. Their reactions are intense and visceral. They are shocked, horrified, and often physically sickened by what they encounter. Some cry, some rage, some refuse to believe it at first. But eventually, they are taught the city's central justification, which is that if the child were comforted, if it were freed, or if its suffering were meaningfully alleviated, then the joy, prosperity, and harmony of Omelas would collapse. This moment is not simply a revelation, it is a form of moral conditioning. The citizens are shown the child at a formative age, and the experience functions as a kind of civic initiation, teaching them not only what the city requires, but how they are expected to respond to that requirement. Shock is allowed, grief is allowed, even outrage is allowed. But what is not allowed is sustained resistance. Over time, the citizens learn how to convert horror into acceptance and acceptance into normalcy until the child's suffering becomes an acknowledged but background condition of life. Now, this is one of the most unsettling aspects of the story. The system doesn't survive despite conscience, it survives by reshaping it. Here, Le Guin is engaging with a long-standing ethical problem that appears throughout moral philosophy and literature, particularly the question of whether collective happiness can ever justify individual suffering. Some philosophers have posed this problem abstractly as a calculation of outcomes or numbers, asking whether the happiness of many can outweigh the misery of one. Le Guin takes that abstract question and forces us to live inside it. She insists that the cost be visible. The child is not a statistic. It has a body, which is the price of the city's joy. What makes Omelas especially disturbing is not simply that the arrangement exists, but that it's normalized. The citizens don't deny the cruelty of the system, nor do they pretend the child is treated well. Instead, they accept the suffering as necessary, and then they build an entire moral framework around that necessity. Over time, most people come to terms with it. They continue to attend festivals, they form relationships, raise children, and live meaningful lives, all while knowing what's happening beneath their feet. Le Guin is not merely critiquing utilitarian thinking here, though that framework is certainly present. She is examining how moral reasoning becomes embedded in social structures, rituals, and narratives until what once seemed intolerable comes to feel inevitable. When a society repeats often enough that something is necessary, it eventually stops sounding like a justification and begins to sound like reality itself. The child, significantly, is never named. We're never given a personal history, an interior life, or a future. I think this absence is deliberate because the child functions as a symbol of concentrated suffering, a single vessel into which an entire society has poured its moral compromise. By withholding the individuality, Le Guin mirrors the very process the city uses to sustain the system. The child can't be fully human because fully human would make the arrangement impossible to accept. Many readers and scholars have noted that the structure resembles scapegoating, a process by which a community preserves stability, prosperity, or moral self-image by assigning its pain to a designated victim. In Omelas, that victim is hidden, institutionalized, and framed as essential. The story forces us to confront how easily cruelty can be reconciled when it's contained, rationalized, and kept out of sight daily. And then there are the ones who walk away. After seeing the child, some cannot remain in Omelas. They leave, they walk alone without protest or explanation, and they move toward a place the narrator cannot fully describe. We're told that the destination is difficult to imagine, yet the walkers seem certain of where they're going. Le Guin offers no details about what they find. She doesn't tell us whether they're happier, freer, or more just. She only tells us they cannot stay. Now, this is where the story most forcefully refuses moral comfort. Walking away feels principled, even admirable, and many readers instinctively want to see the walkers as ethical heroes, but Le Guin just doesn't allow for that to settle. The child remains, the door stays locked, and the system continues uninterrupted. Whatever walking away does for the conscience of the individual, it does nothing to change the material reality of the child's suffering. So, what does walking away actually mean? Some interpretations understand it as an act of absolute refusal, a rejection so complete that participation becomes impossible, even if leaving leads into uncertainty and isolation. Other interpretations see it as a moral preservation, a way of maintaining personal integrity without confronting the structure that causes harm. Still, others read the walkers as evidence of how power limits imagination, offering dissent only in the form of exit rather than transformation. What matters is that Le Guin doesn't resolve these tensions. She leaves us inside them. If society offers happiness built on hidden suffering and the only visible responses are acceptance or departure, then the story forces a more troubling question. What happens when dissent removes itself instead of staying to resist? And who benefits when refusal disappears from view? This is where the story's rhetorical design becomes clearest. The narrator never tells us what to think. It arranges the story so that we feel the weight of each option and then recognize the insufficiency of easy answers. The discomfort we experience is the point of the story. What makes this story endure is not its cleverness, but its honesty. It doesn't flatter the reader. It doesn't allow easy moral positioning. It shows how deeply human it is to desire happiness, how tempting it is to accept justifications that protect comfort, and how difficult it is to imagine justice when justice threatens everything that feels stable. I would argue that this story deliberately refuses closure. After all, Omelas continues, the child remains, the walkers vanish into the distance, and the reader is left holding an ethical remainder that can't be resolved within the story itself. When harm is framed as necessary, what would it actually take to refuse it in a way that changes something rather than simply stepping aside? Le Guin doesn't give us instructions. She gives us a mirror. Omelas is not a place, it is a structure of thought. And the question it leaves us with is not whether we would want to live there, but what versions of Omelas we already accept, justify, or pass by without looking too closely in the real world. In the comment section below, I would love to hear how this story struck you. Did the ones who walk away feel admirable, troubling, or both? Did the narrator's invitation to imagine Omelas shape how the moral turn landed for you? And when a system insists that suffering is necessary, what does meaningful refusal actually look like? And how does this story relate to what's happening in the world today? As always, thank you so much for joining me and giving me a few moments of your time. I really appreciate it. I do hope that you will check out some of my other videos for more insight into some of the most talked about literature of all time. I hope to see you in the next video. Be well.